Hi, readers. I'm Jordan,
And I'm Katie.
and welcome to Not Another Heroine, the podcast where we break down the best and worst fictional heroines, those swashbuckling ladies who have to work a little harder than expected for their happy ending.
This week, we're diving back into The Elf Tangent by Lindsay Buroker, otherwise known as Aldari Gets a Bop-It.
Welcome to part 2 of The Elf Tangent.
Yep. I think it proceeds to get more downhill, but I also kind of think it actually doesn't. Because we've kind of gone through most of the super wild shit, and now we're at just average wild shit.
Oh no. There's some things that happen in part 3 that are right up there with the steamboat eye roll for me.
That's fair. I feel if the first part was how many more crazy sci-fi fantasy aspects are we going to throw into this, and then the second part is how many awkwardly romantic moments are we going to shove into this semi awkwardly. And I want to caveat that I actually liked this book. It was fun, but when you start to assess it from the lens that Jordan and I do, that's I think where it falls apart maybe a little bit.
And that's where I think you and I differ on this book is I couldn't even find a bit of it to enjoy.
Damn.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Lindsay Buroker. It's just not my cup of tea.
That's fair. Yeah. Well, we have derived
that took a dark turn. I'm sorry.
Part 2. And so the whole gang, they have arrived in Elfland. And after their whole interaction with the Vorgs and then getting yeeted off a cliff and then passing the whole river full of sea serpents, they're, reasonably getting fixed up by the mercenary group's medic, Mevleth. I think this is how you say that.
I thought it was Melvith.
I could have just had a moment of dyslexia. Melvith.
I don't know.
One of the two of us has dyslexia.
I trust your memory on this book way more than because I've gotten all the names wrong, including one of the secondary main characters. So
that is true.
Yeah, Mevlith.
Yeah.
We'll go with Mevlith.
Okay, Mevlith. And they're at this little hokey camp thing or whatever. And so interestingly, Aldari is immediately I understand I'm injured, but have you looked at Captain Hawk yet? He got eaten by a sea serpent and then he had to fight a bunch of people. And it's kind of well, he's still your kidnapper. Maybe still keep that in mind. But a moment later,
I thought that was sorry. I'm sorry.
No,
but did you find that as weird as I did? She is hyper focused on getting Hawk care, which I would trust is on people to be able to make those kinds of decisions on their own without little princess being oh, save him, please.
Mm-hmm.
It was
because
weird,
also, right? Yeah, he's your kidnapper and he's an elf and he's the head of this mercenary group. If he actually needs help, he's probably gonna go get help. We're gonna skip past that part. No further thought into that. Just don't think about it. But a moment later, Captain Hawk and Setvik, the lieutenant grumpy guy, come hobbling in, to seek medical aid. And Jordan's probably going to have comments about this. But it should be noted at this point that both the girls had to strip down to their unmentionables to get all their scrapes and boo-boos treated. But now you have your two mercenaries that have also come in to be treated. And I totally was mad respect for Thelly for being oh my God, Aldari, you need to put some fucking clothes on. They can't see you. You're a princess. But that was just a weird, why did they have to strip down to their undies? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. It's this, I mean, honestly, I forgot about this part. This is
I did not.
as soon as the pirates happened, I kind of started skimming a lot.
That's fair.
I kind of vaguely remember this, but yeah, that was weird. And again, thanks for Thelly for doing the right thing. But Aldari, if I'm remembering correctly, and that's not very reliable right now, Aldari should have been more aware and like, if you're a princess, you're kind of raised with all these customs and rules, and I mean, she should have been self-conscious about this.
Yeah,
right?
It's surprising that she didn't even think twice about the fact that some man is seeing her without clothes on.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're all getting like treated, and Thely's like put some clothes on, and Aldari's like totally just ignoring that. So Mevlith, the doctor, is like kind of like annoyed at Hawk because he's probably like berating him, like, why did you get snapped up and eaten by a serpent in the first place? And like maybe work a little bit harder to avoid that. But he hands like everyone in the group a green potion that will allegedly like make them all feel better. And so Aldari takes a decent sip or two. Thely passes it along without drinking because she has like the macho thing going on. And she's like, oh, I'm not hurt that bad. And then Hawk, who again has been like eaten by a serpent, chugs a shit ton. But then Setvik, like obviously seeing that Thely didn't take any, is like, I can't take any either. And so he like, just passes out basically. But he's still in there and alive. But in this like moment, Aldari has like all kinds of interesting thoughts about Hawk, which like fair, I guess, if you're like a sheltered princess and all of a sudden you see like hot guy without shirt on, like being taken care of by a doctor. But it was also mildly jarring. I feel like it wasn't quite natural.
Yeah, maybe. It's like Aldari switches from like princess math mode to like a teenager who's discovering boys for the first time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it could be one of those things that it is that like what is it called? Maybe like demisexual, when you're like not interested in people until you find like the right person, and then like all of a sudden you're like are experiencing like sexual attraction for the first time. Like maybe that's our Aldari in this instance, but it's still a little weird.
That much. I don't know.
Thought.
Yeah.
That's fair. But, yeah.
So with this whole potion, this green potion thing, I am in the midst of playing Harry Potter Legacy. And there is I know I don't need your judgment, readers or Katie, but there is a green health potion that you drink called Wig and Weld potion. And that's all I could like envision right now as you're describing this green bottle getting passed around. Because that's what you drink. It's a green potion. Green
I love it. Oh.
You need to play Harry Potter.
I know. Well, I'm waiting for it to come out on Switch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't want to buy a second Xbox. It's going to be
so much worse on Switch. Just no.
I know. Maybe I'll get it on Switch, and then after that decide that I then need to spend, another several $100s to play it on like a different system. It's fine. And so everyone has kind of like gotten the medical treatment that they need. And Thely kind of takes the opportunity to make fun of Aldari a little bit and like, just remember, like, you're a princess and you need to stay a virgin. And Aldari's like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm not even thinking about that. That's weird. Like, no one is, thinking about that here. And it's like, girl.
Okay, that reminds me. Sorry, this is going to be my last interruption. I'll let you proceed on. But at the very beginning,
the interruptions
of the story,
are good.
I don't know about that. But this whole version thing came up like page 1 or 2 of this book with her sister, like Aldari's sister, also crown princess, whatever.
Yeah.
And like her sister is supposed to be this like uber experienced, like confident in her sexuality princess.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's weird, right? Like there's these two princesses, right?
Weird.
Like same upbringing, same rules. Yeah.
Because that princess is the older princess too.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd think it'd be like inverted, like the crown princess, because obviously she's going to be like sold off to whoever, and you would think she would have to be.
I wonder if this whole like virgin thing is an Aldari thing and not like a like societal standard thing.
And then so Thely's concern is just because like she has to marry the Prince of Orith. I can see that. But I feel like in that case, you would think still to a degree, like Thely would be like, here's your opportunity to like have sex with someone that you like actually know and like instead of some random dude that you've never met before. And maybe that's like showing my ignorance about like how in like historical instances they could tell if someone was a virgin or not, but like how are they gonna know? You know what I mean?
Well, you traditionally you save the wedding night bedsheet and then you hang it over the castle wall so all of the people can see that you had a pure bride. Did you know that?
What? What?
Yeah, like see. Okay, so I'm not a historian. Let me put that out there, but I've read enough historical romance to like have like a sense on like consistency a little bit and like that's got to be like okay, it's probably historically accurate to a sense. But yeah, they would save the sheet on the wedding night and see if there's evidence. Ew, gross. But you know, God help you if you're a woman and you ever rode a horse.
Yeah, or anything. That's fascinating. I would be so embarrassed. I don't love that. Okay. The more you know.
Well, okay, to say nothing of okay, maybe this is a little too much for this episode, but like sometimes you would get like checked.
But like how does that, and maybe I don't know enough about like female anatomy because of like, the public school system, but like there's no way. Like I feel like that's totally fake. But then if the older sister isn't a virgin and then they like checked, but did that not matter?
That's what I mean. Like, I don't know if it matters like in this particular world. Yeah. I don't know. It's weird. Like we were saying, like there's all these weird contrasts with the technology and the setting and the little things like the Dewey Decimal System, like
Dewey Decimal
and steamboats. It's fine.
Oh my God. So when you said steamboat earlier, I thought you meant like romantic, like, oh, he's a steamboat. You were talking about
Jesus, Katie.
The actual, like technological. Ew. Well, that just clicked.
Oh my God.
You can tell what a hot mess this is.
Oh, I think we're struggling more with this one than we did with the Stardust Thief.
That's fair. Because I think the Stardust Thief, so that was like a fully published by like a formal, big time publishing company and like probably went, well, we have our own thoughts on that as well, but it like probably went through several rounds of editing. But I know that Lindsay Buroker is like self-published, I'm pretty sure, but she has like, what is it, alpha and beta readers and stuff. But it could just be like one of those like fun ones that like you turn your brain off a little bit.
Not fun.
Yeah. Anyways, they set off the next day. But before they can actually like set off and leave the little camp, Hawk's like, "Oh, Aldari, can I speak to you privately again?" Which again, these little like private side meeting things, interesting. But he takes the opportunity to give her this like little metal like tube gizmo thing that was allegedly made by the sorcerer's like inventor brother, and it has a bunch of like twisty symbols and characters on it, and like I kind of imagined it like a Bop-It.
You know what? That is probably spot on. I hadn't really pictured anything except for like, I don't know, like a rain stick with some buttons on it.
A rain stick.
But a Bop-It is probably, that's like that.
That's fair. Because like I guess the concept is you like turn the individual parts and then like stuff happens, but they're like individual turn things on the same tube. That probably makes no sense to anyone, but just like imagine like a fancy looking Bop-It.
Aldari gets a Bop-It. That might be our episode title.
Oh, there it is. You guys are watching this like live, like real time with us because you're like, that's what the episode is actually called. But you can tell the recording order that we were going about, but that's fine. But back to the Bop-It, Aldari's like, okay, cool, thanks, but like, what does it do? And Hawk is like, I don't know, like maybe you could figure it out. And it's like, okay, that's not maybe the best of gifts, but that's fine.
You get the impression that Hawk is kind of dumb, like kind of like pretty boy dumb.
Yeah. Oh my God. What is that? The term? A himbo. I was hoping you were going to spit out your drink.
I probably would have had not heard that before, but my friend introduced me to that term like a couple months ago, and like, what the fuck is a himbo? Oh, yeah, I got it. Got that.
Am kind of, so again, another tangent, like immediately into this episode, but I am low-key obsessed with the idea of a himbo because I feel like, and especially in like romance books, because I feel like at every opportunity, like we've been like bombarded with the idea of like women being like bimbos and like not being very smart and just being like obsessed with like beauty and stuff. So I love the idea of these like himbos that are just like super hot, super muscly, but they do not have anything fucking going on upstairs. Like the golden retrievers of men. Like I love that idea that are just like, yeah, I'm here to like do whatever. Love it.
Our podcast mascot, if you've heard him barking in the background, is a golden retriever.
Yep, he's a himbo.
He is a beautiful, beautiful dog, but the gears are turning real slow.
They're just like, it's the constant little like loading circle.
Yeah, like, oh, do we have a 404 error here? But you know what? He's pretty and loyal.
That's all we're looking for. Himbos. But yeah, so Captain Hawk is a little bit of a himbo. That's the vibe that I got. But their little like rendezvous meeting before they can leave is interrupted by one of the Twisted. So that's one of the like zombie elf things. And I think this is the first time that you actually like see them and they're described. But it like pops out of the shadows and it like kind of like tries to get at them. But there's this like magical force field kind of thing protecting the camp. And so they're kind of stuck on the other side. But we're immediately kind of clued in that the Twisted are maybe not like attracted, but they like, are attracted to magic. And so you immediately think that this like tube thing is magic somehow. And so Hawk kind of gets like this like sad look in his eye, and Aldari is like, oh, that's weird. Like, why are you looking sad at that instead of like, oh, I should probably go kill it? And he kind of mentions that all of the Twisted, the zombies, used to be elves. And like, because the elves have like, they have such long lifelines, like it could be someone that you know. So that would be super mildly traumatic. But after this, the crew kind of sets off for the actual main, like, only remaining city or like elf city, which is where the king resides, and so that they can actually go out to this like archaeological dig once they get kind of the approval from the king, because he doesn't seem to like know about the kidnapping, as we will eventually find out.
Dude, at this point, I'm waiting for them to find dinosaur bones or something. Like that's the only thing we're missing is in this story.
I'm actually surprised that they didn't try to pull in dinosaurs. Like one of those, like, how many can you add? And it's like a little score sheet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like running out of breath from talking. I don't think that's healthy. Evidently I need to work out more. Well, so the crew kind of sets out for this town. And then Aldari is like sitting in the wagon and she's like playing with the little like metal tube thing. And Theli is immediately like, our captor gave you a puzzle. And Aldari's like, yeah, like, do you want to see it? Like, isn't it cool? And Theli kind of like groans and she's like, how did he know the one thing he could give you to make you fall in love with him? And Aldari's like, what do you mean? Like, I'm not in love with him. And it's like, it's a puzzle. Like, you're a puzzle gal.
This was the dumbest shit. Oh my God. Okay. Like, it's like forcing the romance line down our throat. Like, it doesn't need to be that obvious. Like, we get it. She likes math. She likes puzzles. Oh, Hawk magically happens to have a puzzle. I don't know. It's just, it felt forced.
I could see that. See, and that was, I think we talked about it in the last episode. But like this book is so long that you didn't have to force the romance. Like there were opportunities to have it like kind of naturally manifest over the period of time that they're like together, or like even leave it for the part, as we'll get to, where she kind of like voluntarily decides to go with him to this archaeological site and, like help the elf kingdom. Like you could have left most of the like romantic underpinnings for then and like all of these little moments instead of like immediately making her obsessed with him.
Yeah, and just making it's a convenient romance line. Like it was too convenient. I want it to be a struggle. And I kind of got the impression that our little himbo got like a Kong toy with a treat stuck in it. And he's like, I can't figure this out. Like, here's a Kong, play with it.
And she's like, well, actually, that's pretty accurate because she's like immediately playing with the puzzle. And then she finds out that it's like a calculator kind of thing. And you like spin the little dials and you say a certain thing. Oh, sorry, that was my phone. And you like say a certain phrase in like Elven language and it like pops out with the answer. So like it's basically the Kong toy. And she's like, oh, there's just like the kibble. And then you pull it out of the hole. And he's like, whoa.
You're so smart.
It's like, it is a Kong toy. There's peanut butter in the way, but you just get that out. And so before anyone can get like too excited about this discovery of the tube calculator Bop-It toy, Captain Hawk is like progressively looking less and less good and is kind of like zoned out and eyes are hazy. And then all of a sudden he falls off his reindeer because they don't ride horses.
Reindeer. We forgot to mention the reindeer in part 1. My God. Did we not have enough going on? But we got to make it even more different and special. We're using fucking reindeer. Sorry. I'm yelling at Katie and she's like, reindeer. I'm sorry.
Now I feel bad for recommending this book, but it was kind of like all over the place. I thought it was all over the place in like a fun way, but I don't think Jordan thought that.
You know, it would have been fine. Like, I can handle all of these weird-ass plot devices if the dialogue had been better. Like, if the characters were more heartfelt.
I could see that.
Because I don't think the writing is necessarily bad. I think the writing is fine. But yeah.
So we could probably talk about it more in the Q&A episode, but this was actually like an interesting experience for me because a lot of Lindsay, the author, a lot of her other books that she's written, the romance is really slow and it like develops like she does a lot of like friendship first and then it kind of like naturally turns into romance. So I was pretty surprised that this was like immediately like right off the bat, like you know who the love interest was going to be and like you know it's going to be a love interest because like literally all of her other series like you don't get any kind of actual like romantic interactions before book 3 maybe like it's drawn out.
That's what I generally prefer too. I mean, I know I said I would give this author another chance. It's just really hard for me to trust again.
That's fair. That is fair.
I do like that. So it is interesting that she kind of took a different spin here.
And it could be that because I can imagine that like only writing multi-book series is like really exhausting. So it could be that she wanted to try a one-off as like a kind of like a refresher and to try something new. So maybe that's why the pacing felt a little bit weird because she's used to those like having 1,000 pages to really develop a relationship that seems like natural. So that could be kind of some of the wonkiness. So yeah, Hawk fell off his reindeer. LOL. There's got to be some kind of like weird joke there, but he fell off the reindeer. And so they shove him into the wagon that Aldari's sitting in. And so everyone looks like a little concerned that he's not going to make it because he's like looking really not good. And I feel like at this point we should mention that Aldari's also not feeling great. Like she's having like stomach cramps. What are they called? Like rumbly tummy, which was kind of like a weird.
What did you just call them?
Rumbly tummy. It's a thing. Like, you know, when you get like a rumbly tummy and you're like, oh, I'm just not feeling that good. Like, I don't need to use the bathroom like right now, but like if I don't seek a bathroom soon, like the rumblies.
Thank you for the breakdown. Yeah, rumbly tummy.
I think we can
divide humanity into two types: people who use the word tummy and people who flat out refuse to say tummy ever.
What are you?
I am not a tummy person.
No way. Oh no. My God. The outrage. This isn't real. Who doesn't use tummy?
Me and several other rational people on this planet.
It is a tummy. It's not a stomach. That sounds like you're talking about like medical problems. Ew. No, it doesn't even sound good. Don't say it. I didn't realize I could be triggered by the word stomach, but I can.
You're as triggered by stomach as I am by our himbo and the word tummy. So
what a combination we have here. Himbo tummies.
We compliment each other. This is why we work.
That's fair. That is true. Two sides of the same coin. Well, our himbo, his tummy is not doing very good, obviously, from the... I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. I saw an opportunity.
Oh my God.
His tummy's not good because probably, the serpent teeth were infected. And so they're kind of like tumbling down the highway, like road thing. And everyone's like pretty concerned because he's getting worse and worse. And they're like, this man is on the brink of death. But thankfully, this like hawk, and like an actual hawk, like the bird kind, floats down to them with a message from the king's advisor that's like kind of asking how things are going. And so Setvik is like,
you mean they
don't
use cell phones? Like, because I mean, I'm sure they could have some sort of technology that would enable more than fucking carrier pigeons delivering messages. Sorry, just gonna sit back.
That was violent. But fair. We do have. Well, so actually, though, that's a pretty good point because like when steamboats were around, or like steam powered ferries in like our lives, well, not our lives, but like our timeline, however you want to say that, did we have phones?
Telegrams?
Yeah.
Telegrams. Mm-hmm.
But what if you were traveling? Because like telegrams are like stationary like places to like get them, right?
Again, not a historian, but there would be like stations like in every town where you could deliver a message to, I think. I'm recalling the animated movie Balto. Did you ever see it?
I love Balto. That was like one of my favorite movies, but it always made me cry. I'm gonna be real.
Yeah.
Oh, but yeah, so that is kind of weird. I didn't think about it at the time. I'm like, oh yeah, hawk, makes sense. But yeah, you would think they would have some kind of other like more advanced way to contact each other.
Or maybe like even a magical device, right?
Oh, that's true. Wait, but the magical device would like attract the zombies. Mm-hmm. So they could just use like a regular technological device, because it didn't sound like the fairy was like magic.
Mm-mm.
I have questions, Lindsay, but it's fine. Kind of. So though we're just gonna skip past that. Setvik is like stressed out on how to respond, and Aldari's kind of like confused about why he's like so stressed out. Because it's kind of like suspicious. Like, does Setvik not want to admit that Hawk is like on the brink of death or something? And so she kind of is like pretending, well, not pretending, but she's taking care of Hawk and like, worrying about how sick he is. And she's like, I'm just going to write the response and then send the Hawk away. And so she kind of like dashes down and like writes it. And she's like, hey, we like need help immediately. We're surrounded by the Twisted that have been like following us since we left the camp, and like Hawk's on the brink of death. Like, please send help. And like the Hawk leaves right as Setvik turns around and he's like all mad. But thankfully she did this because like immediately as soon as the Hawk leave, the Twisted use the opportunity to like step in and start wailing on them. So immediately think of like zombie invasion. And so Aldari and Theli are in the like wagon thing, and they're kind of forced to protect Hawk from all of these zombies because he's unconscious. And they've kind of like universally decided that they'd rather be with Hawk than Setvik, because like Setvik has been like completely antagonistic towards them, whereas Hawk is a kidnapper, at least has been nice. And I kind of understand that. Like, if I was kidnapped, I'd want to stay with the nicer kidnapper than the like scarier one. But yeah.
Did you find Setvik's like antagonism overly pronounced? Like way too much? Like it was meant to be exaggerated to counteract Hawk's like niceness.
I could see that. Because it didn't feel natural. You know what I mean?
No, it felt like, yeah, you could have snarky personalities who just like, I hate everyone, like, fuck you. But like, that's not someone's entire personality. Like 90% of the time, there's something else going on. And I wanted to see more depth from that character.
Yeah, because he was definitely one-dimensional, and like the one dimension was snarkiness, but just like at random points, like it didn't even make sense as like snarky comments. And so like obviously the zombies are starting to like overwhelm them, and things are not going well. But then all of a sudden in the distance they hear these like horns, and then the Elf King himself pulls up, but I think it's actually his son. Do you remember? Like 80% positive.
I want to say it was like the Elf Prince, like on behalf of the Elf King.
Okay, yeah. So the Elf Prince shows up, and he's like, you know, he has his auxiliary forces, and they immediately surround all of the like the wagons and the reindeers and push off all of the evil zombies. But this like prince is apparently kind of like pissed off, and he's like, Princess Aldari, like, what the fuck are you doing here? And like, why are you near Captain Hawk with like a sword? And that's a reasonable question. And she's like, oh, well, I'm protecting him. And he's like, okay, like, thank you for that, I guess. And like for keeping him safe. But like, why does he need protection in the first place? Like, why is he passed out and like on the brink of death? And like, why are you even here? And Aldari is like your kingdom kidnapped me. Like, what do you mean? Why am I here? And he's like, blink, blink. I don't, it does not compute. And so like amidst all of this, like, suspicious glances and back and forth, he's like, you know what? This is not my problem. Like, I'm just going to go back to my dad, and he's going to figure it out. Cause like, no fucking way am I going to figure out what's happening right now. And so Aldari is like suddenly not so sure that they've actually been rescued. Like, yeah, they kicked off all the zombies and stuff, but they're kind of in a pickle. Because it seems that like the king and the prince didn't know anything about her being kidnapped. And then all of a sudden they're in this, headed towards this elf city. And the one person who seems to be supportive of them is like on the brink of death. And so they're kind of like brought to the elf city, and they're stuck in this like little house thing that's like not a prison but kind of a prison, but it's like a nice prison. And Aldari is still having like the tummy grumblies, not feeling awesome. And so they're just kind of sitting and waiting. They don't know where Hawk went, they don't know where anyone else went, but they're just like stuck in this room until the Elf King kind of pops in and introduces himself. And Aldari is like immediately like, oh my god, like, how is Hawk? And again, like in that situation, if you're like a princess from a neighboring kingdom and like the king came in, I don't know that I would be worried about my kidnapper. I would probably like immediately be like, hey, so like, can we get me back to my like home kingdom? Like, is that an option?
Yeah, that kind of cycles back into this whole Aldari being this love-struck teenager type, where she had all of these mighty goals in the beginning of like saving her kingdom, and like, oh, she's a published economic writer, but like instances like this with the Elf King, she just turns into a little girl.
Yeah. And it's surprising too, because like, oh, well, now that I think about it though, and maybe I can like put this into words that's intelligible. Like, I feel like a lot of super smart people are maybe not the most like socially, like,
we can't relate to that at all.
Yeah. As I'm like struggling to form words, like you can tell what camp I fit in. When so maybe it's one of those
Katie
things.
and I, so for all you listening, when Katie and I went out several months ago, like girls' night out, go out dancing with some other girlfriends, she and I are the friends that like will stand in a corner until someone forcibly drags us into like the midst of the action. So thank God we had a friend who is like the designated extroverted friend to like engage with people.
Yep, this is true.
Yeah. Yeah, she and I are definitely on that train of
yeah.
Like, yeah, little socially
We're on that
awkward
side of the spectrum. So like I totally get it, but maybe it could be more like explained or like clued in a little bit more that like maybe our girl Aldari is a little awko. And it could be that we're supposed to pick that up from all the interactions, but she kind of seems like well adjusted, except her thinking is just like weird and teenage. You know what I mean? Like she talks to people normally.
Like is she extroverted but awkward? Because she kind of comes across as an introverted type in the beginning, but has no reservations about interacting with all these other people, right?
Yeah.
And then add in the whole princess thing. Like I like when characters don't see class, right? But if you're a princess, it's reasonable to assume like, oh, you've been like separated from like normal people for your entire life, and you wouldn't even necessarily want to interact. I mean, it's going to sound classist, but like if you're a princess, that's how you were raised to be. It just seems weird that she just doesn't see any kind of social rank here.
But then it's still so awkward, but not awkward. Like if she really didn't see social class, like, I don't know. I have questions. It's a little odd.
We keep getting like lost in our own thoughts about this particular book.
Yeah.
Because there's so many weird tangents to go on.
Oh, Jesus. I'm just going to ignore that. But I think it's when you try to summarize it and like in the book, it's not as jarring as I think as oh my God, not as jarring as it is in this summary. Cause like, there's like words in between all of these like craziness, but, it's still a little jarring when you're reading it, but definitely like when you put it into summary form, you're like, I have questions. Like, how do all of these little like tidbits fit together in a not insane way? But the king is basically like, Hawk's not awake yet, but like once he is, I'm gonna have questions for him, and like he needs to explain what the fuck is going on. And Aldari's like, okay, yeah, you do that. And then the king leaves, and they're still stuck in this not prison thing. That is until one of the mercenaries from their like main trip kind of like pops up randomly, and he's like, hey, like I'm gonna take you to the library. And they're like, okay, that's cool. And it's like, yeah, so you can read up on magic puzzles that we have in these scrolls. Like maybe it'll help you like give you some ideas. And so again, I feel like I would be a little bit suspicious of this, but like they just kind of jump on board. And so they're led to a library, which is immediately very suspicious because it's kind of like a basement and everything is like dark, and there's like a giant tree above them, I think. So I kind of imagine like a Hobbit hidey hole, but with a tree on top. And everything's like kind of hunky-dory until the mercenary, who apparently thinks that Aldari poisoned the captain, he locks them in there. And all of a sudden, these like freaky weasel raccoon creatures like pop up in the dark corners and like start closing in on them. Like I imagine the like flashing eyes, and you're like, what are those? But they're like toddler sized, for reference. So kind of scary, but not scary.
So attack raccoons. We now have attack raccoons in this book. In the library, because that makes sense.
You need some kind of like pest control if you're going to have like a bunch of important documents around. But anyway, there's also some kind of like pine tar in here or some kind of like alcohol that's in like tubs. And so Aldari kind of like rolls one into the animals, with Belly helping, and then sets it on fire somehow. And then the whole tree starts to, set on fire because this is an elf town where everything's made out of trees. And then it starts smoking. And so the elves pop back up and they're like, what the fuck? Like, why did you set our library on fire? And Aldari's like, well, you guys like locked us in there with those like freaky raccoon things. And everyone's like, what do you mean we locked you in there? And she's like, bitch, like y'all shut the door with the expectation that they were going to eat us. What are you talking about? But then we just kind of like skip past that assassination attempt because like Hawk's awake. And all of a sudden they bring her up to him to talk. And this part was like weird too. I'm like looking at my notes and like they don't even really make sense.
This whole scene was like confusing for me because I couldn't envision it. There was so many new characters introduced.
Yeah.
And, like there's a whole subplot thing going on with Elf King, Elf Prince, Captain Hawk, Mercenary. And also, can we have Aldari be even remotely suspicious that like the king and the prince are apparently on a first name basis with Captain Hawk?
Yeah. Because that was weird. And then it was also weird that she didn't think twice about the fact that like Hawk kidnapped her, but the king apparently doesn't know anything about this kidnapping. And like, I know we've kind of like talked about it, but the advisor was like talking with Hawk about trying to find someone to help with the puzzle, but that's never really explained at this point. But she does not even like raise any kind of eyebrow at the fact that no one apparently knows that why she's been kidnapped. Like that would be a little bit of a red flag.
Yeah, it's an entire kingdom, right? Like a kingdom kidnapping royalty from a neighboring kingdom. That's a big fucking deal.
Yeah, that's like an act of war.
Yeah.
Yikes. So I'm just gonna summarize.
Has a puzzle, so it's fine.
And Captain Hawk's a himbo. And so they have like a conversation. They're all like kind of like handsy and like lovey-dovey with each other, like flirty. But like I think at this point Hawk admits that he, you know, kidnapped them not on behalf of the like king, and he's probably going to get in trouble for the whole thing, but he just wanted to help his kingdom, and this is kind of like their last hurrah to try to find a solution. And so Aldari's like, oh my god, like you're kind of not guilt tripping me, but like almost. And she's like, well, I think like I maybe want to help you guys. And he's like, oh, really? But then, you know, the king comes in who's immediately like, okay, take the prisoner or like political prisoner, you know, whatever Aldari's status is at this point. Take her back to her room. I need to like lecture Captain Hawk some more on why he's being like a fucking idiot. But also again, like why would the king feel the need to like, you know, berate this random. Yeah. And why is he staying in the castle?
Mercenary captain?
Yeah. It's not even like the royal army. It's just like a random like troop.
Yeah. The Moonsword Battalion.
Yeah. Oh my God. And so we kind of like skip past that. The next day, Aldari and Theli are summoned to the throne room, and like the king is there. And also the king's advisor, but the king's advisor, it is just revealed, is the queen. So it's like, okay, well, that's, you know, obviously the queen is going to be the king's advisor because they're married, at least to a certain degree, but like, that's fine. And so they're kind of like questioning Aldari, like, you know, what happened? Why all of a sudden did Captain Hawk get so sick? Like, this is very suspicious. And then it's kind of like they're thinking that Aldari poisoned him. And Aldari is like, well, what do you mean? Like, I didn't do anything. I've been like feeling sick too, but just not to the same degree. And then all of a sudden during this kind of like very polite interrogation, it clicks for Aldari that like it was probably the green potion that the medic gave them because, you know, Theli was feeling fine. She didn't take any. Setvik, the grumpy lieutenant, you know, because Theli didn't take any, he couldn't take any either. But the two people that actually did take some were the two people that got sick. And then like Hawk, because he had his like tummy ripped out by serpents or whatever, he had to take a bunch of it. And so it makes sense that he's like more sick. And so the queen kind of like sends someone out to try to find the medic to like question him. And then the guy, the like runner comes back and he's like, oh my God, the medic is missing. Like he fled. And it's like, oh, okay, that's like, you know, suspicious. He's probably guilty. And so at this point, the king is like, oh, okay, that's Akko. You know, Princess Aldari, I'm like really sorry about this whole thing, but like you weren't even supposed to be kidnapped, like wonks. We're just gonna like send you home. And this part like made me really angry, but like Aldari has like objections to the fact that they're trying to send her home. And she's like, no, but like I want to help you guys. And it's like, again, like, what about your own fucking kingdom?
Fucking switch is what happens here. I also had issues with, I clearly had issues throughout the book, but this was a big one.
Yeah, because I felt like I wasn't really super, like I didn't have a lot of concerns about the book necessarily, like specifics until this point. But it just kind of like, if you're the princess and you know, have been writing these economic papers your whole life, like talking about how to save your kingdom, and then you're finally given the opportunity to actually save your kingdom by like marrying the prince of the, you know, Orith or whatever. And you're like, oh no, but I want to have an adventure. Like, girl, like, what the fuck? Like, you don't actually care about your kingdom. And so that kind of, was Mia. But during this, like, you know, offer, and he's like, okay, we're going to send you home. Hawk pops in, and Aldari is like, well, like, please, you know, let me help you in your kingdom. And Captain Hawk is like, yeah, please, like, she's already here. Like, might as well let her help. And Theli, like, in the background is like, nah, like, we need to get the fuck out of this bitch. Like, what are you smoking? Like, they're offering to take you back home. But the king is like, nope, you guys are going home literally tomorrow, and that's the end of it. And that is where we will also stop. And so apparently Aldari is on her way home. Maybe. Because there's a part 3.
Don't remind me. At least
Jordan has her head in her hands right now, if you're wondering.
I'm struggling to find words right now for this because there's so much that happened in part 1 and seemingly very little in part 2. We had a zombie attack and we got to meet the Elf King. And then this whole poisoning thing. So this is like, we're 2/3 of the way through the book at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So why the need to cram everything right at the front and then drag this whole middle section out? And then we still have one more part to go. It's fine.
That's true. Again, the pacing is like kind of wonks.
Yeah. But readers, listeners, I get to narrate part 3.
Oh, geez.
Stay tuned.
I feel like it's going to be a little bit painful. But again, I just want to caveat, like, we're roasting this book a little bit, but it's like one of those like fun reads that you really don't have to think about things. You can just like enjoy, you know, Captain Hawk being a himbo and, you know, like weird, you know, aspects that you don't really get to read about in fantasy romance, like reindeer and zombies and fairy
sea serpents,
steamboats.
Pirates, archaeology, volcanoes.
That as well. It doesn't really pop up in fantasy. So if you just want to kind of like whet that weird, you know, edge, this is the book.
I think I would caveat this because I would hate for our readers / listeners. I still don't know what we call our people.
I don't know. Our friends.
I like readers though. Our friends.
Oh, I like readers too.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe we'll stick to readers. I would hate for our readers who have never tried Lindsay Buroker, like myself, to start with this book. So maybe wait, maybe dabble in some of her other books and don't read this one. If you're just listening for funsies and you haven't read this yet, maybe start with something else.
I totally second that.
What would you recommend, like, to start out with this author?
So I think you should read The Emperor's Edge. The only thing is it's a little bit of a commitment. I think there's like 8 books in the series, but they're really fun adventure books. There's light romance in it, but that's not really like the main key part. So if you're someone that enjoys fantasy romance, but you also don't mind when the romance is like, you really have to pay and then it's kind of like a buyout at the end, or like, you know, you have to work for it. I definitely recommend the Emperor's Edge series. It's like a steampunk setting, but there's also like magic aspects. And basically it's this like woman who works for kind of like an inspector police department or something. And she's put on this mission, which is like totally impossible, but on purpose, so that like, you know, she's just too much of a good like do-gooder. And so she's told that she has to go take out this like assassin who's, you know, number 1 on the top like wanted list. And it turns out that they start to like work together to kind of take out whoever this bad guy is that is corrupt and he's trying to like ruin the kingdom. And hijinks ensue. I feel like that's the best way to like end that. But the romance is like really natural. And they, start out as like kind of like hesitant allies, working towards a common good. And then, like naturally you're like, oh, like you're not that bad of a person. Like, I don't mind you. So, and he's very like moody and quiet, which I feel like is the himbo of our era.
That's fair. See, I like that description already. I'm intrigued.
Mm-hmm. It's a really fun book. Like it's, I don't know that I've read many books like it. So it's like very unique in that aspect. And I like that the main character is actually strong. Like I feel like we always hear about like strong female, protagonist, but she's actually like, she cares about her, fake country and she like wants to do good and she cares about people. And that's like the big thing is like she kind of like adopts all of these like random loners and kind of like creates her own little like cute orphan family because she like just likes people and sees the good in them. And it's like kind of adorable. But yeah. So the Emperor's Edge series, loved it. I've read it like 2 or 3 times.
Oh, multiple times. Okay.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that.
Nope. It's a lot of fun. And their romance, their love story is adorable. Because it's kind of like TV shows. So TV shows, how they have to like really draw out the romance between like the 2 main characters so that they like don't like ruin it in season 1. It's super similar because it's always at the end of the book that like a cute little like romantic interaction happens and you're like, God damn it, I gotta read the next one. It got me, 7 times in a row. So
okay, that's enough of a sell for me. So maybe that's what I'll read next. Okay, well,
highly recommend.
Do you want to sign us off?
I feel like I can't. Like I'm always the second part. I don't even know.
Have we
what
ever
the first part is? No. I'm scared. We can't do it now.
We are afraid of change and commitment. All right.
Same.
From our shelf to yours.
We'll see you next. Oh my God.
See, this is what happens when we overthink it too much. All right.
Yep, I got so sweaty.
Thanks for sticking with us through part 2 of the Elf Tangent. We will see. I almost said we'll see you on the next page.
God damn it, that's my line.
Okay, focus, Jordan. Here we go.
Yes.
From our shelf to yours.
We'll see you on the next page. Hi, readers. If you'd like to help us pick our next book, send us a message on Instagram.
Or if you'd like to just listen, we post new episodes every Monday on Spotify, Amazon, or Apple Music. Thanks for listening.